Hello and welcome. We're talking tonight about a very controversial topic. We're talking about the marriage amendment in Minnesota. We're taping this on October 1st, 2012, and many of you will be seeing it on October 29th, but some of you will be seeing it later. So I wanted to put the dates in perspective here. My guests on this show, I'm going to have two segments, and the guests on the first segment are a mother and son who are going to talk about the vote no side of the marriage amendment here in Minnesota. And then in the second half of the show, I have a man who's going to talk about voting yes for the marriage amendment as it is written here in Minnesota. So I'll introduce you first to Lori Luxinger.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
And your son, Taylor, who just drove down from University of Minnesota Duluth to join your mom. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you
for coming down.
Absolutely.
Well, is the tension from the campaign and the election hoopla, is it personally wearing for you both?
Oh, every campaign cycle, I think it's kind of exhausting for everyone. Everyone who has to watch the ads and listen to the hoopla. But this one is a particularly notable year for us. Yes, we're paying particular attention to the marriage amendment issue. It brings home, so.
Home literally, doesn't it?
Literally.
I read about you first in the Star Tribune this summer when you and your partner, Karen, were featured. And you've been together how long?
Almost 12 years.
12 years.
Over 11 years, yeah.
So a good hunk of your life, Taylor.
Big chunk, yep.
Yes.
11 out of the 20, 12 out of the 20 almost.
And you said prior to that you were in another relationship with another woman.
Taylor's other mom
So
for 14 years. Yep.
So it's been your life.
It has been.
To grow up in a family with two moms.
From day one, yep.
And from what I've heard, Taylor, you feel very positive about it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very, very, very blessed. I feel very happy with my family situation.
As a little boy, did you get questions or teased? I mean, kids can be, cruel. Kids can be
absolutely
hard to answer sometimes.
I felt very little personal bullying or abuse or anything. It's I think mainly because I grew up in South Minneapolis, so very open area to grow up in, neighborhood. And so I felt very accepted in my community and my schools and everywhere I went. I went to a Montessori school for elementary school and middle school, so that was again a very open, community, and so I felt very, very good about it.
I can tell just as you talk now, you're feeling positive.
Absolutely.
Well, what do you both think is at stake here with this vote that has really, at this point, sounds like it's divided Minnesotans pretty much right down the middle?
Yeah, it seems very close. For me, it is, of course it affects me personally. It is the issue that is in my home every day, but we've managed. But for me, it's a larger issue of discrimination, and I just can't see it another way. I just don't see how you can deny that this is just a matter of discriminating against a group of people. We're being denied a right. It's not that I don't think anybody believes that gay people don't exist anymore. It's really true. We're out there, and faced with that fact, we have families of origin, and we interact in everybody's life in the same way as everyone else. And just by virtue of that fact, we work, we pay our taxes, we are members of communities, and we are being denied access to some legal rights and benefits that heterosexual people can enjoy. And so for me, it is just an issue of fairness. And I'm fairly horrified that we would be considering writing that discrimination into our state's constitution. We've never taken rights away from individuals since the beginning of this country. We have only expanded them in an effort to be more fair. And this is that first case where a group of people is being denied a right and it's being entered into our Constitution.
Do you know what percentage of Minnesotans in our state are gay?
I don't. The figure that is most often referred to is about 10%.
That's what I have in my mind too.
I've heard that before too.
Have you heard 10?
I have.
10 to 12, I think, is a pretty reasonable figure.
Okay.
And that's been true since I've been looking into this issue. I don't know that that figure has changed much, but I have only heard.
So
I
1
don't
out
know.
of 10. Do your views parallel your mother's, Taylor?
Yes.
In terms of what's at stake?
Absolutely. It's really important to also mention the multiple federal and state level rights that are getting taken away by not being allowed to be married, because you can have Social Security benefits, your partner's work employment benefits, and you cannot enjoy those unless you're married legally. And so it's really important to talk about the rights that are being taken away by this amendment.
What are some of the other specific ones that come to your mind when you think personally of your life?
Well, my partner works at a hospital, so this isn't as big of an issue just on our personal level, but just hospital visitation, or if something happens to her, then the house that is also mine it just doesn't automatically come to me. There's a probate issue, there's Medicare, Social Security, pensions, health care. As far as I've known, gay people just don't work any less hard or are less deserving of any of these particulars. And for the next generations, I feel like it's important to not set aside a class of people and say they're just not quite as worthy.
Do you draw parallels with the civil rights movement?
To some degree, I do.
Absolutely.
And you do too, Taylor.
Yes,
You're nodding.
absolutely, and like interracial marriage from however many years ago is it seems very similar to me. It seems like you are taking a group of people and pretty much saying that they are lower class citizens than another group of people, which is just inherently wrong, and it's not a good thing to.
It was in
pass
my
on.
lifetime that black and white people were not allowed to intermarry.
And yeah, and the idea of it today is ridiculous, and so it's like.
So you see this following that same discriminatory pattern.
Absolutely.
What about the religious argument? Does that affect your thinking much? A lot of people are talking about religion as a reason to vote one way or another.
Right.
That does seem to keep coming back. And it's good to know, because really I am very confused. If it's like a conservative liberal issue or a religious issue or non-religious issue, I was really very confused about why anybody would feel this way. I didn't understand that it threatens straight marriage, and I just don't understand that, and it just keeps coming back to religious reasons, and that people are using tenets from a religion or a spirituality, a faith. And I think that it's really important to keep that separate from how we govern. I think that's why our country exists. And so to say that you're going to write discrimination into our Constitution because of a religious tenet is just so many kinds of wrong.
You mentioned too a common theme that I've seen discussed or heard discussed and seen written about is if this vote is if the no vote prevails, that will undermine marriage for some people. How do you answer that? And maybe Taylor, you go first, because you've grown up in a family in which there wasn't a marriage per se legally.
Right, legally a marriage. I just don't understand how that could possibly affect other, heterosexual couples' marriages. It doesn't make sense to me. It's not their marriage. It's not going to affect their marriage. It's not going to affect them at all. It's if you don't want to legalize gay marriage, don't get a gay marriage. Then that's fine. Don't do it. But you can't govern other people's rights based on your own religious beliefs. And it's been that way since the beginning, and it should stay that way.
There's quite a break I have heard in our state in terms of age, with younger people feeling more as you both do, and older people feeling the opposite. When you talk with friends, are you finding most are going to be voting no?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know anybody that's going to be voting yes. That's my age. I've talked to many people my age about it, because it's a really important issue to me, and I have not talked to anybody my age that wants to vote yes. It doesn't make sense.
There's some real divisions, aren't there, I think, which is very interesting. Well, we have 1 minute left.
Okay.
Is there anything either one of you would like to say on a personal level to people to get out and vote?
Well, I feel like it's coming. I feel like it's a matter of time before, really even nationally, DOMA goes away and we have it. DOMA goes away and that we have equal rights. I think this is clearly a civil rights issue, and I think we are on the right side of history. It's really important for people to understand that we don't threaten, we don't have an agenda, and we just have loving families like everyone else, and are just making our way through the communities and through our lives like everyone else.
Well, thank you both for coming down.
Absolutely.
And sharing your vantage point and your very strong feelings about this. Is very, very important, I think, for people to hear from real people.
Definitely.
On both sides. And we're going to take a quick break now, and then be back with the man who's going to talk about voting yes. So stay tuned. So we're back. If you're just tuning in, we're talking tonight about the big controversial amendment, the marriage amendment here in Minnesota. And we're taping this show on October 1st. So we're going to be airing it right before the election. I just interviewed a mother and son who were talking from the vantage point of being in a gay family and urging people to vote no. My guest for this half of the show is Chuck Darrell. Chuck is with Minnesota for Marriage, and he is the communications director for that organization.
Yeah.
On loan from another job, you just told me.
Well, yeah, definitely.
I asked Lori and Taylor, who were just on, is this season feeling stressful, and how are you sleeping? I mean, it's so intense right now in our state.
Well, some nights are better than others, that's for sure.
I bet.
Some nights I'll sleep like a log for a long time, and then other nights I'll wake up early in the morning.
Take notes,
and start thinking,
things I need to
what
do.
ran through my head that day or that night. I'll get up, go downstairs, check my emails, that kind of stuff, see who sent me a tweet. Oftentimes it's from my own daughters.
Giving their dad advice.
Sending me new pictures of my first grandson.
So
that happened in the midst of all this as well. It was a real blessing.
Adding to but that sort of anchors a person, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When something big goes on in the family. What do you think, Chuck, when you think about this amendment and its meaning for Minnesotans? What do you think is at stake here for us?
Well, I think really what's at stake is who's going to make the decision on the definition of marriage. Is it going to be politicians? Is it going to be judges? Or will it be the people of Minnesota? And we believe that it should be the people of Minnesota that make that decision. Marriage is the foundation of society. It's the bedrock of the family. And if we're going to redefine it, then the people of Minnesota should always be involved in that debate. Right now, our opponents are trying to take that discussion out of the hands of the people and put it into the hands of judges and high-paid lawyers, or into the hands of politicians. For instance, right now, there's a court case that's pending in Hennepin County District Court. It's Benson versus Chapin. And the idea there is basically to grant marriage licenses to a number of same-sex couples, which is basically put marriage on trial in Minnesota. At the same time, in our state legislature, half a dozen bills have been introduced over the last few years to redefine marriage in any number of different ways. In fact, a very prominent politician, Senator John Marty, said that he basically promised that he's not going to give up until he runs his bills through the state legislature and legalizes same-sex marriage. What that means is that the people will then be taken out of the debate. They won't have a say in it. It'll be decided either by politicians or activist judges. And most people in Minnesota, in their heart of hearts, think that it's the people that should decide this.
Now, the people are going to the polls, we hope, in big number to vote their thoughts. But they're not really changing as much as perhaps most people think either side. We've got laws already in place that aren't going to be taken back, correct?
Well, clearly our opponents are trying to change the law. They're trying to do that in the court and the state legislature. And so what the Marriage Protection Amendment does is it simply says, we're going to take our current laws and put them into the state constitution to preserve our current definition as between a man and a woman. But it does more than that, too. It also ensures that Minnesotans, the people, will always be part of that dialogue. So if later somebody tries to come along and change it in the legislature or change it in the courts, no, they're going to have to go back to the people and ask for their permission to redefine marriage. So it actually keeps the dialogue going.
In terms of back and forth to, from where it is now, back to another vote at a later time,
Sure.
if need be. I just was reading in Sunday's paper about the Supreme Court and what's probably going to be on their docket this next year. And one of the things they mentioned, one of the top 4 big issues is probably the same-sex marriage issue. How do you see what we're doing here as being dovetailing with what might be decided at the Supreme Court?
Well, I think what's really important is that it's just a continuation of the dialogue that's gone on in 31 other states across the country, where every single time that the people have been allowed to decide on the definition of marriage, every single time they've voted to keep marriages between one man and one woman. And we look forward to Minnesota being the 32nd state, but that sends a loud message to whatever may happen at the federal level as well.
And do you anticipate they will weigh in on this issue from what you've heard?
I don't have a crystal ball on that one. What we're doing right now is working to preserve marriages between a man and a woman in Minnesota.
If they did vote on it, it would negate the state laws, I am guessing.
That remains to be seen. But the main thing right now is we're just focusing in on Minnesota and trying to ensure that the people have got that they remain in that dialogue, no matter what happens, and that it's not a closed door by high-paid attorneys or activist judges like in Hennepin County District Court, or that a state legislature comes along, passes some bills, and manages to get the right governor and signs off it, and then all of a sudden marriage is redefined for everyone in the state of Minnesota without them having a say.
Do you personally view it, Chuck, as a religious issue more than a political issue, more than a legal issue? or a value issue more than a religious issue? Where do you kind of put the greatest weight in terms of what makes sense for you?
Well, you know, it's a good question. And it's not just one of those things. I mean, fundamentally, you know, marriage has been the bedrock of society and the foundation for the family since almost the dawn of time. It's served us very, very well. And if you take a look at it, I mean, we look at what's gone on in the last 40, 50 years in our nation, and it's clear that we've come to understand that kids need both a mom and a dad. And preserving that environment, because marriage essentially says that for every child born, there's going to be a mother and a father. It says that to society, basically, that there'll be a mother and father there to take care of the child and to be responsible to each other. It's the next generation that we're taking care of. And the government has a vested interest to make sure that they continue to maintain the optimal environment for that next generation.
Do you feel that, and I asked this of the guests in the first half too, do you feel that one's view of marriage is undermined by another view? I'm stating that a little obtusely, but is your marriage or my marriage impacted by someone else's marriage in a significant way? Or do you feel it is?
Well, I think it's not so much about my marriage or your marriage. What it is really about is whether the people are going to be able to decide on that. I mean, gays and lesbians deserve all the love and all the respect of anybody else on this planet. They can also choose to love whoever they want, but they don't have a right to redefine marriage and force that on everybody in the state of Minnesota, especially in a way that would kind of elbow them out of the conversation.
One of the guests that you just met, a 20-year-old, and he said everybody he knows is voting against the amendment. Are you finding in your communications work that it's split a lot also age-wise as far as?
That's an interesting question. What we're finding is that the marriage amendment receives support that crosses every possible demographic or ethnicity or religious group that you can imagine. It receives tremendous support from the African American community. If you take a look at exit polls with Proposition 8 in California, which was their marriage amendment, they supported the amendment by 70%. The union households supported it by 57%, Hispanics by 53%. And what we found with the youth vote is that it changes dramatically by the time they have kids. So we're back to this children thing, that children are a part of marriage. And typically what happens is you'll see the younger generation, it will lean towards no. But when kids come into the picture, all of a sudden everything changes, and the polling data shows that they suddenly turn and start voting much like people that are my age and have gray hair.
That's interesting.
But it's a fascinating thing. In fact, what it means is that the harder that that people work to get out the Obama vote, the better the marriage amendment will do, because it's kind of that core constituency of African Americans, union, Hispanics.
I have heard just recently that the Somali community is primarily going to be voting, if we can generalize, for the amendment.
Yeah, we've
we've
spoken in a number of mosques and with a number of imams, and we get unwavering support from Somalis. Also, the Hmong community stands very strongly. You know, it's just marriages between a man and a woman, and there doesn't seem to be, in their mind, you know, any conflict. That's what it should be.
So it's a cultural thing, isn't it? It's
I think it goes to
thing.
natural. It goes back to natural design. I mean, it's who we are. I think, you know, you mentioned religion. You know, God created both sexes, and there must be a reason for both of them to be there, and marriage is part of that reason.
We have your website, and we have the website of United Minnesotans to put on for you. So I'm hoping that if you are undecided, you can go to either one of, or both of these websites, not either.
Sure.
Go to both of them and learn more. So first of all, Vote No organization, Minnesotans United for All Families. You go to www.mnunited.org. For the Vote Yes organization that Chuck is from, Minnesota for Marriage, go to www.minnesotaformarriage.com. Both of those websites will be informative and helpful, I think. And we've got 30 seconds left.
Sure.
Any reason
You
you want to give people to
I
get to the
think one of the things, if you go to our
polls?
website, check out our marriage minutes. There's scores of them there, and they deal with every single issue that you could possibly imagine in the marriage amendment discussion. The other thing is for people to remember that if you don't vote on the amendments, it'll be considered a no vote. It's Minnesota law. So if you go in and you vote for all the candidates and skip the amendments, it'll be considered a no vote. So please make sure you vote on the amendments, and vote yes.
And that's an important distinction. A no vote, or not voting is
Right.
a no. Well, thank you for being with us. We'll be back again next week. Until then, inform yourself, go to those websites, and get out and vote. Bye-bye.